Hey guys, some days the human brain just decides to take the day off. For a few people, that day happens every day and always in public. We're not collecting small mistakes. These are the moments where you look at someone and wonder, at what point did the thinking stop? Not accidents, not misunderstandings, just decisions made with absolute confidence. Everything you're about to hear actually happened, was documented, and requires zero exaggeration to be funny. 1. A man in Florida pulled into a McDonald's drive-thru and decided to pay in a way that forced everyone involved to rethink the concept of currency. He threw a live alligator about 3 feet long through the service window, not out of anger, not as a threat, just, in his mind, a fair exchange. You have food, I have an alligator. Where is the problem? What's remarkable is that nobody reacted as if it were a movie scene. No screaming, no fainting. Everyone just stood there, processing the fact that a reptile was now sitting in the area where you normally count loose change. In Florida, this wasn't completely shocking. It just slightly exceeded McDonald's internal policies. The police arrived. The alligator was removed. The man was arrested. And society collectively agreed that this was one of those rare moments where the question, what was he thinking, doesn't really have a useful answer. There are places where you pay with cash, credit cards, or mobile apps. And there are places where you absolutely should not experiment with your local wildlife. 2. Two men in California robbed a store. The plan was solid. They went in, took what they wanted, ran outside, and at the exact moment when a getaway vehicle is supposed to appear, they realized they had forgotten one small detail. There was no car. Most people would panic. They didn't. They did the most familiar thing a modern American can do. They pulled out their phones and called an Uber. Not a random location, not a safe house. They entered their home address, because after a long day, nothing beats going home. The problem was that the Uber driver had the radio on, and the radio was broadcasting a news report about 2 robbery suspects he was currently on his way to pick up. Perfect description. Perfect timing. A destination so accurate it removed all doubt. Police were waiting. Uber completed the trip. No 5-star rating, no tip. Just another reminder that technology is incredibly convenient, but it is not obligated to protect you from your own bad decisions. And if you plan on committing a crime, maybe don't use the same app to order food, get home, and get arrested all in the same afternoon. 3. A man in Texas walked into a store, picked out his items, and approached the register like any other customer. He then pulled out a $100 bill. The only issue was that the bill had been drawn with a marker, not printed, not convincingly fake. Just a piece of paper with a familiar face, illustrated with absolute confidence. When the cashier looked up, the man didn't hesitate. He didn't run. He didn't change his story. He calmly explained that the bill was real because he had drawn it himself, and he was, in his words, a very good artist. At that moment, the logic of the situation stopped being about finance and became entirely personal. If I believe it's money, and I worked hard on it, then spiritually, this is money. Police were called. They also looked at the bill. They also confirmed this was not a new release from the Federal Reserve. Photos of the bill spread through the media, serving as a gentle reminder that creativity is valuable, but not always accepted at the checkout counter. And in America, believing in yourself is important. Just don't try applying that belief to the monetary system. 4. A police officer pulled a car over for erratic driving, a very normal situation. But when he approached the vehicle, he noticed the driver was steering with his feet. Both hands were busy. Each one is holding a large burrito. There was no alcohol, no drugs, just 2 burritos and a poor decision about time management. When asked what was going on, the driver gave a very simple answer. He was hungry. No defensiveness, no excuse, just a basic human truth. The body cam footage captured the entire moment, and what made it go viral wasn't the danger, but the strange logic of the explanation. Everyone has thought they could eat while driving. Most people stop at one hand. This man took it one step further, and that step carried him straight onto the internet. In America, burritos are important, but there is one thing that matters more. Use your hands for the correct purpose while the car is moving. 5. A defendant in Missouri decided to represent himself in court. That alone requires a high level of confidence. But he didn't stop there. When it came time to pay fees and submit paperwork, he pulled out a bag of cocaine and handed it to the court clerk as if it were a newly accepted form of payment. There was no sneaking, no whispering, just a very direct gesture, similar to handing over cash or a credit card. In that moment, the courtroom had to process 2 things at once. Confirm that this was not money, and confirmed that this was absolutely evidence. The clerk refused. Police were present, and the man, very efficiently, provided additional reasons for his court case to last much longer than planned. Court records later confirmed the incident, serving as a reminder that confidence is good, but there are places where you should not test personal innovation. In America, the right to self-representation is taken seriously, but that right does not include expanding the definition of court fees to substances that immediately increase your charges. 6. A man in Washington, D.C. saw an opportunity and took it. He broke into an unmarked police vehicle, stole a GPS unit, and left feeling like he had outsmarted the system. It was the kind of moment that makes someone believe they are smarter than the government. The problem is that GPS devices have a very specific function. They track location, and police, who are quite familiar with this, simply turned on the tracking system and waited. No theories, no chase, no knocking on doors. Less than an hour later, the man was arrested, not because someone recognized him, not because of a hidden camera, but because he was carrying a device designed to tell police exactly where he was. The Washington Post reported the story as a perfect example of universal balance. You can steal from the police, but if you steal something that helps them find stolen items, you've just completed the hardest part of their job for them. In America, technology is powerful, and sometimes it sides with logic over confidence. 7. A woman in Chicago faced a very familiar big city problem: no parking spaces. Instead of circling the block, she chose a cleaner solution. She drove her smart car straight through the glass doors of a shopping mall and parked inside the women's shoe department. It wasn't panic. It wasn't an accident. Security footage showed everything was deliberate. The car was parked neatly between the displays, not blocking aisles, not knocking over sandals. A very responsible parking job if you ignore the fact that this was not a parking lot. After parking, she got out and started trying on shoes, as if this were simply the next logical step in the shopping process. The car was just transportation. The shoes were the goal. Police arrived while she was still choosing footwear. The mall had to handle a situation with no existing protocol, and the internet gained another piece of evidence that in America, if your car is small enough, you may begin to see the world as a much more flexible space than intended. 8. A man in Pennsylvania showed up to get his driver's license photo taken. This is usually a quick, forgettable administrative task, until this man arrived wearing a full set of medieval armor. Helmet, metal chestplate, complete accessories. The DMV employee asked him to remove the helmet. He refused. Not as a protest, not out of defiance, but because, according to him, this was his everyday outfit. The discussion lasted about 20 minutes and revolved around a question that normally does not require debate. How is everyday? Eventually, the helmet came off. The photo was taken. The DMV later confirmed the incident, serving as proof that the American bureaucracy is designed to handle many unusual situations, but not always prepared for a medieval night. In America, you are free to express yourself, but when it comes to a driver's license photo, the government only needs to see your face. It does not need to know whether you are headed to a jousting tournament or just going to buy milk. 9. A man in Florida finished his work shift and realized he had a serious problem. He wanted to go fishing immediately, but his truck was blocked in. For most people, this is when plans change. For him, this is when he looked around and noticed a forklift parked nearby. He climbed on, operated it with surprising skill, lifted his own truck off the ground, moved it over the other vehicles, and gently placed it onto the street, like rearranging inventory. Everything went smoothly, no damage, no collisions. From a technical standpoint, it was a perfect operation. The only issue was that the forklift belonged to the company, and the company does not employ people to move personal vehicles in the service of after-work hobbies. When police and management arrived, they could not deny his competence, but they also could not ignore that he had just used industrial equipment to solve a personal inconvenience. He went fishing, but he also lost his job. In Florida, self-reliance is highly respected. It's just that some skills, no matter how well executed, should not appear on your employment record. 10. A woman in New Jersey stood at a checkout counter with about $50 worth of groceries. When it was time to pay, she didn't reach for her wallet. She pulled out a Powerball lottery ticket, not a winning ticket, just one for a drawing happening later that night. The cashier refused. She was surprised, slightly offended even, because in her logic, the ticket was about to win. It just hadn't happened yet. And if everyone could be patient for a few hours, then spiritually speaking, this was already money. The argument continued. Cameras captured the moment she tried to explain that probability wasn't a major issue and that belief should count toward payment value. The people waiting in line weren't sure whether to support the concept of hope or just wanted to finish shopping and go home. In the end, the ticket was not accepted. The transaction did not go through. American society gained another perfect example of how optimism is a wonderful quality, but retail systems prefer things that have already won over things with strong potential. 11. A man in a public park looked around and encountered a familiar modern problem. His phone was about to die. No outlets, no coffee shop nearby. And then he noticed the automatic sprinkler system on the lawn, a fixed metal object, attached to the ground, water coming out, close enough to infrastructure to inspire confidence. He plugged his charging cable directly into the sprinkler head. No rushing, no confusion. He just stood there and waited. A few minutes passed. He began to look annoyed, staring at his phone as if it had betrayed him. This outlet was clearly broken. People walking by stopped. No one intervened immediately. This was a delicate moment between misunderstanding and social experiment. Cameras captured an adult quietly negotiating with a park irrigation system. In the end, there was no battery, just water, and a gentle reminder that technology has trained us to believe everything can be charged, as long as it looks like it's attached to a wall. In America, faith in outlets runs deep, but not everything with metal threads is a power source. 12. A homeowner in Oregon looked at the hedge in front of his house and thought it needed trimming. A very normal thought. The unusual part was the tool he chose. No shears, no trimmer, just gasoline and a lighter. In his logic, fire works fast, and technically, he was correct. The hedge was dealt with in record time. The problem was that fire does not recognize job boundaries. Once it finished the hedge, it moved onto the porch, then the wall, then the rest of the house. The fire department later confirmed the incident with the calm tone of people who have seen too many confident decisions. No one disputed efficiency. Fire is an extremely effective tool. It just does not come with a stop-when-done setting. In America, the do-it-yourself spirit is encouraged, but there is an unspoken list of tasks that should not be optimized for speed. That list usually starts with things made of wood and ends with the familiar sentence, "I should have used scissors." 13. A man in Florida looked at the pothole in front of his house every day and decided the government was taking too long, and if the state wasn't going to fix it, he would. He bought quick-drying cement, mixed it carefully, poured it straight into the pothole with the satisfaction of a completed civic duty. The problem was that the pothole wasn't just a pothole. It sat directly above the neighborhood's main storm drain. When the cement hardened, it didn't just fill a hole, it permanently sealed the drainage system. The next rain arrived right on schedule. The water had nowhere to go. The entire street began flooding with sewage in a way no one had anticipated when the cement bag was opened. The city stepped in. Reports were filed, and the idea of fixing it neatly officially became fixing it so the whole block remembers. No one questioned his good intentions, but in Florida, infrastructure is a team activity, and when you independently upgrade one small part, you may accidentally upgrade your neighbor's living experience in a way they never signed up for. 14. A man in Texas broke into a store after closing hours. Everything went smoothly. He got inside, took what he wanted, and then, at the moment he tried to leave, he discovered one small detail his plan had overlooked. The door had automatically locked from the inside. He tried opening it. Nothing. Tried another door. Still nothing. No panic, no shouting. After a few minutes of thinking, he made the most reasonable decision of the 21st century. He called 911. The call was recorded. In it, he calmly explained that he was trapped inside a store he had just broken into and needed police assistance. No special requests, no urgency, just help open the door. Police arrived. The door was open, and the man was immediately placed in handcuffs, following the exact procedure he had personally activated. In Texas, honesty is respected, but sometimes complete honesty only makes the process faster, not the outcome better. 15. Rush hour on the New York City subway already requires emotional endurance. Crowded, hot, heavy air. And then a man boarded the train carrying a portable gas grill. No hiding, no hesitation. He set it up, lit it, and started grilling sausages like it was a weekend park outing. The smell spread quickly. Some people turned around, some backed away, and some, in a very New York fashion, asked for the price. Remarkably, he sold a few sausages before anyone remembered this was an underground public transit system. The smoke increased. The train stopped. The car was evacuated. The MTA later confirmed the incident with the tone of an organization that has learned to accept creativity beyond policy limits. In New York, you can sell almost anything, almost anywhere. But there is a short list of places that are not appropriate for a gas grill. And the subway, where people just want to get home without being smoked, is usually at the top of that list. 16. Rush hour in Philadelphia is when everything has limits. Time, space, patience, and then a man boarded a city bus carrying a full-sized refrigerator. Not a mini fridge, an actual refrigerator, taking up nearly the entire aisle. The driver objected. The passengers objected. The man didn't understand the problem. According to him, this was personal luggage. He was simply moving his belongings from point A to point B, just like everyone else. The only difference was the size. The argument happened in public, was recorded, and spread quickly. Not because anyone yelled louder, but because there was a very clear moment when everyone realized that the concept of personal luggage requires a physical limit. In America, public transportation is designed to move people. Sometimes backpacks, occasionally suitcases, but rarely are large household appliances meant to preserve food for an entire family. And when that boundary is crossed, the internet is always ready to document it. 17. A man in Vermont arrived at town hall to pay his property taxes. No envelope, no transfer, no check. He pushed in a wheelbarrow filled with coins, pennies, over $5,000, 1 cent at a time, rattling like a political statement on wheels. He called it a protest. What he was protesting mattered less than whether the local government could legally refuse the payment. And in America, the answer is usually no. Money is money. They accepted it. They counted it. Every coin. Slowly. Without joy. But entirely by the book. It took hours, multiple employees, and a great deal of patience. The town later confirmed the incident as a textbook example of how you are free to express yourself, but the system will always respond in the most methodical way possible. Vermont is known for politeness, and nothing is more polite than silently counting thousands of pennies to demonstrate that the law has plenty of time for you. 18. Traffic police in Nevada pulled over for an unusual sight. A man was kneeling next to a large truck, no jack, no spare tire, with his mouth pressed against the valve stem. He was attempting to inflate the tire using only his breath. There was no panic, no anger, just the complete focus of someone who believes that if he tries long enough, physics might eventually compromise. Each time he paused to breathe, he leaned back down and continued, as if this were a test of determination rather than a mechanical problem. Police documented the incident not because of immediate danger, but because of how deeply human the moment was. When you have no tools, no backup plan, and no desire to call roadside assistance, you begin negotiating directly with reality. In America, perseverance is highly valued, but there are limits that personal motivation cannot overcome. And a truck tire, with its volume, is one of those places where lung power is more symbolic than effective. 19. A man stood in front of a self-checkout machine at a supermarket and felt that technology was actively working against him. He placed his items down. The scanner didn't respond. He tried again. Still nothing. And then he pulled out what he believed was the solution: a TV remote control. He pointed the remote at the scanner and pressed buttons repeatedly, like changing channels. Not as a joke. He was completely serious. When nothing happened, he became frustrated. Clearly the machine was the problem. An employee came over and needed a few seconds to process the situation. Not technically, but conceptually. This was one of those rare moments when an adult fully believed that all devices with buttons spoke the same language. Employees later confirmed the incident, while bystanders weren't sure whether to intervene or simply remember the moment when consumer technology finally surpassed human intuition. In America, self-checkout was designed to save time. But sometimes it creates silent conversations between people and machines, where both sides believe the other is being uncooperative. 20. A teenager in the United States was arrested for shoplifting. Not a serious crime, no chase, no drama. As officers began the process, he pulled out a Monopoly card. Get out of jail free. He handed it over with complete seriousness, as if years of board games had finally led to this moment. The officers looked at the card, looked at him, and laughed. Not mockingly, just the natural reaction when real life collides with board game rules. Local news reported that the teenager appeared to genuinely believe in the mechanism. If the game allowed it, society might be flexible too, But society does not run on dice rolls, and the legal system does not include pre-printed exemptions. He was still handcuffed. The card had no effect. But the moment was recorded as a gentle reminder that youth often comes with optimism. It just usually needs an update before being applied to the real world. 21. A man in Minnesota walked into a home improvement store in late February carrying a Christmas tree. Not a new one, not green, no trace of fresh plastic smell. The tree was dry, brown, and shedding needles, serving as a clear reminder that Christmas had ended a long time ago. He placed it on the counter and asked for a refund. The employee asked for the reason. The answer was short and delivered with complete sincerity. It died. No argument. No additional explanation. The tree had stood proudly in a living room, fulfilled its seasonal purpose, and no longer met long-term expectations. Store employees later confirmed the incident as a perfect example of how return policies can cover many situations, but not every biological life cycle. In America, customers are often prioritized, but even the most generous retail system has limits when faced with a Christmas tree that has fully completed its holiday duty. 22. A man in Florida decided to combine two popular activities of the digital age: theft and live streaming. He opened Facebook, turned on the camera, and began broadcasting himself breaking into cars and stealing items, narrating the process for his viewers. No mask, no blurred location, no delay. The audience grew, comments poured in, some encouraged him, some warned him, and another very important group was watching as well. The police. They didn't need advanced tracking, no complex reasoning. They simply watched the live stream like everyone else and drove directly to the location being broadcast in real time. Court records later noted that the man was arrested while still alive, with the audience watching. In Florida, social media is part of daily life, but this was a clear demonstration that not every moment needs to be shared. And if you choose to live stream your crimes, the internet won't just give you views, it will give you an audience in uniform. 23. A woman walked into a Petco store with her young child and noticed the self-service dog wash area. Clean machines, running water, soap, a tub. And most importantly, much cheaper than other options. In her mind, these points automatically combined into a reasonable conclusion. She placed the child in the tub, turned on the water, and began bathing him as if this were a multi-purpose service that simply hadn't been marketed correctly. No hiding, no secrecy, just a cost-efficient decision. Store employees took a few seconds to process the situation. Not because they hadn't seen strange things before, but because they had to mentally confirm a rule that normally doesn't need to be written down. Dog wash stations are for dogs, and only dogs. Police were called, not out of hostility, but sometimes society needs a very clear boundary between convenience and complete wrong. In America, parents are encouraged to be flexible, but flexibility does not include applying pet services to humans, even if the size difference is minimal in the early years. 24. A man in New Orleans decided to deep fry a turkey in his apartment. This already requires a high level of caution, but he added one small detail. The turkey was still frozen. When the turkey was lowered into the hot oil, physics responded immediately. Oil boiled, water trapped in the frozen meat vaporized, flames erupted, and the apartment shifted from family dinner to emergency. The explosion was strong enough to blow out windows. Fire alarms went off. The entire building had to be evacuated. The fire department later confirmed the incident as another reminder that cooking instructions are often written in smoke, fire, and repeated lessons learned. In America, deep-fried turkey is a tradition, but that tradition always comes with an unspoken condition. The turkey must be thawed, and preferably not prepared in an enclosed space where neighbors are forced to participate in your dinner plans in very unintended ways. 25. A man in Wisconsin looked up at his snow-covered roof and decided winter was taking too much of his time. Shovels were slow, brooms were exhausting, and so he chose a solution that required no bending: a flamethrower. From an efficiency standpoint, the plan worked perfectly. The snow melted almost instantly. No climbing, no shoveling, just extreme heat meeting flammable materials and physics handling the rest. After the snow disappeared, the roof began disappearing as well, in a very committed way. Neighbors called the fire department. Officials later confirmed the incident with the calm tone of people familiar with Wisconsin winters and highly creative decisions. No one denied that a flamethrower is a powerful tool. It is simply far more powerful than standard snow removal requires. In places with heavy snowfall, people are always looking for faster solutions, but there is a thin line between saving effort and setting your house on fire. And that line usually appears immediately after the sound of ignition. 26. A driver in Chicago entered a packed parking garage and faced a very familiar frustration. No available spaces. But instead of leaving, he noticed a narrow gap between two cars and decided the issue was perspective. He drove in, not horizontally like everyone else, but vertically. The front of the car pointed downward, the rear lifted. The result was a temporary installation piece, a vehicle standing as if reflecting on its life choices. No one was injured, no other cars were damaged. But the entire garage paused to take in the moment. Even the tow truck driver took a few minutes to decide which angle made the most sense. Photos spread quickly because some images don't need captions. In Chicago, space is always a problem, but parking garages are designed for two basic dimensions, and when someone attempts to add a third, the internet appears immediately to document the creative effort, even if the outcome is not recommended for repetition. 27. A man in Las Vegas finished his vacation and approached the hotel front desk to pay a bill of about $1,000. He didn't pull out a card. He didn't use cash. He placed a neat stack of casino chips on the counter. The only issue was that the chips came from a different casino, directly across the street. The clerk refused. The man didn't understand. In his logic, money is money. Chips represent value, and Las Vegas is essentially a city built on faith in small round pieces of plastic. He argued for a while, with the expression of someone who genuinely believed the system was being unnecessarily rigid. The hotel later confirmed the incident as a perfect example of how symbols and value are not always interchangeable. Casino chips have value, but only inside the building where they were born. In Las Vegas, everything revolves around money, but each casino prefers its own. And if you want to pay a hotel bill, it's best to use something that doesn't require crossing the street first. 28. A driver in California pulled into an automatic car wash. A familiar process. Stop the car, shift gears, wait. The only difference was that he didn't roll up the windows. When the water and soap began spraying at full force, the interior immediately became part of the wash. Leather seats, dashboard, everything received a thorough cleaning. The driver did not stop the process. He went through the entire cycle. Afterward, he complained to the manager that the leather seats were wet. The car wash cameras captured everything, from the open windows to the water flooding in, as a deliberate choice. The incident was later confirmed not to argue responsibility, but to clarify a very basic point. Automatic car washes are designed for the exterior. The interior is a personal decision. In California, customer experience matters, but that experience still relies on the assumption that car windows should be closed when the water starts spraying. And if you skip that step, the leather seats are simply doing their job. 29. A man in Florida was driving and saw a DUI checkpoint ahead. For most people, this is the moment to stop and answer a few questions. For him, it was the moment to think bigger. He pulled over, took out his phone, and called 911. He reported an armed robbery happening in another area, hoping all officers would leave the checkpoint to respond to the emergency. The plan sounded complex, but he explained it with complete seriousness. He believed he had just activated a strategic move. The problem is that police do not operate on an all-or-nothing system. One car was sent to check the fake call. The rest stayed exactly where they were, and when the man drove forward, he was greeted as originally planned. The call recording was saved, not to celebrate creativity, but to demonstrate that emergency systems exist to handle crises, not to assist in avoiding personal responsibility. In Florida, imagination is abundant, but when used to outsmart police, it usually just results in better documentation. 30. Two men in Iowa decided to rob a convenience store and prepared their disguises carefully. They used clear plastic bags over their heads. No holes, no blurring, just a thin layer of plastic pressed against their faces, revealing every detail. Technically, their faces were covered. Practically, the security cameras captured everything clearly. Eyes, nose, mouth. Even the anxiety was visible through the plastic. This was one of those rare cases where covering your face made identification easier. The evidence went to court. No complicated analysis. No long comparisons. The plastic bags created no mystery, only shine. In Iowa, the legal system relies heavily on clear evidence. And when you choose a transparent material to hide your identity, you are helping the system operate more efficiently. Sometimes failure doesn't come from lack of preparation, but from preparing with an item that performs the exact opposite of its intended function.